Welcome back, Holligans, once again for another episode of the intriguing, mysterious, marvelous movie Howl. I'm Joe, joined as always by my fantastic, whereas not always technically proficient co-host Ryan. We're here to give you another one.
There's a point.
Movie. What?
There's a point of diminishing returns with technology where you get too complicated and you just screw stuff up.
Way easier than you should. Yeah,
that's where I'm at. Yeah.
So this is a movie I picked. I just happened to be, flipping through some stuff on, I guess Netflix, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Netflix.
I've been wanting to watch this, and it was a 2011 movie, Warrior, with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton and Nick Nolte, and I kind of thought I knew what I was going to get, at least to some degree, based on anything that I knew about this beforehand. The synopsis is there's these two brothers, and they both end up joining the same MMA tournament, and have to end up fighting each other. And so I'm like, okay, all right, we'll see this and see. It was not what I expected.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be, I don't know. The synopsis talks about like a teacher joining like an MMA thing, and there's what's his name, Kevin James movie about that, where he's some kind of school teacher.
Here comes the boom.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, is this what this is going to be? But yeah, I saw Joel Edgerton, I saw Tom Hardy. I didn't notice Nick Nolte. We talked about this a little bit after our last episode, just like that it took me a second to recognize him until I heard his like that just Nick Nolte voice. There's no other,
like gravelly, like raspy,
but somehow a little bit high pitched at the same time.
Yeah,
in the right circumstances. But yeah, really surprising movie. Definitely didn't go where I thought it was going to go. This is the kind of movie I really like, simply because I don't know what they're going to do.
Yep.
I hate knowing exactly what's going to happen. I really like it when they can throw a curveball at you. I like it when it's not just your standard paint by numbers kind of thing, and that's what this is. There were a lot of really tense moments and situations where it's like, I mean, there's a little bit of cheesiness.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain fights where the same thing happens multiple times, not literally the same footage over and over like some movies do, but like this guy punches like that, then he does an uppercut. It's like that happens multiple times between certain characters. You see exactly the same scenario play out, but I guess that's also part of kind of where they're going with their strategy, is that they need to change things up. So who knows if that's why they're doing it or not.
Yeah,
but
this was
overall, like they do a really good job of making it tense, because even though they have these little things you could nitpick if you wanted to, the way it's shot, some of the sound is a little difficult to hear, some of the accents are a little odd, but it's like, it's overall really well done. And again, it's like, it's a movie where you can feel the tension of the people in the audience that's watching these fights, that is.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what's going to happen either. A lot of movies, it's super obvious. Not this.
No, this was like, I'm not a humongous UFC MMA fan. Did a lot of martial arts when I was younger. And when I was with that crowd, they always wanted to watch the big UFC titles. Somebody would pay-per-view it. We'd all go to their house and watch it. I mean, I'd go to hang out and have a good time. And some of the fights were good, but when it gets more into the jiu-jitsu wrestling aspect of it, I don't really care as much. I don't need to see guys grabbing at each other while rolling around on the ground. I mean, I do understand it. I understand, how hard that is to do that, all that stuff. But this wasn't a movie about that.
No.
You thought it was going to be, but it wasn't. It was about these two brothers, the Conlons. You have Tommy and Brendan. Brendan's played by Joel Edgerton, and Tommy's played by Tom Hardy. And one of the things I thought was I didn't realize Joel Edgerton was in this, and I like him. And when I realized it was both of them, my mind goes to, I wonder why they did this movie. Like those are, and I think it was a little before, 2011, so 11 years ago, before Tom Hardy was the level of star I think that he is now.
Mm-hmm.
but like why would they pick this? Then you watch the movie and you understood it. It was about the characters, about those two and how they interacted with Paddy Conlon, played by Nick Nolte, and a little info on that. The two writers of this movie, what's it, Anthony Timbakis and Gavin O'Connor, they're neighbors with Nick Nolte in Malibu.
Hmm.
Um, and they wrote the role of Paddy for him. The studio was resistant to casting Nolte, but the writers held firm, and he this movie was put up for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Nick Nolte. And
Yeah,
I thought it was a fantastic role for him. It was really good.
I do too. I agree. I thought his, his kind of subdued behavior and that voice that he's got, I think those all worked really well as being this kind of recovering guy with a past that's hinted at, but we don't ever see it. There are no flashbacks. Like they
Yeah.
didn't feel the need to do that. They described that through the way he interacts with his sons. That's how we were told the story of how he was, and that he was an alcoholic and he was abusive and this and that and the other. And I think his best scene was, there are two best moments and they're really different, although they're right next to each other in the movie. There's where Tom Hardy throws those quarters at him. They're in this casino
Yeah.
and he throws this like cup of coins at him. And the look that he has on his face, he looks genuinely surprised and hurt. And it looked really real. And then there's another scene right after that where he's going through some stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Without getting into what he's doing exactly, he's really having some problems dealing with the fight, the altercation that he just had with his kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intense. Like it's one of those things that you would be genuinely uncomfortable to see somebody doing in real life.
Yeah, it was a real moment. That moment in this movie was really good. I thought there were several. So in this movie, you've got Brendan Conlon. That's Joel Edgerton's character, who was married to Tess Conlon, played by Jennifer Morrison. I think most notably known for her role as Cameron on House. And I mean, I liked her on that show, and I thought she played. She wasn't. It wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't a. I don't think anything she did in this was unrealistic.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like
I liked her behavior. I liked her character. I liked that it wasn't. There was a little bit of contention around what he wanted to do, what Brandon wanted to do, and how she wanted things to go, and she didn't want to slide back to where he was living that kind of life and putting himself in danger. But he's got this very old fashioned like moral code where he's like, nope, this is the way I have to do it. We can't go backwards. Like we're going to lose the house if I don't, get back into this and whatever. And a lot of movies would use that as sort of one of the main conflicts, that the husband wants to do this thing and the wife's like, no, you can't, you're
Right.
you can't risk your life over this. Like a lot of movies are like that. That's part of the main conflict. But with her, like she resists it, but in a very realistic way. She gets swept up in it just like everybody else does. Because like the whole school that he teaches at gets swept up in it, and the principal's in his house watching the match on TV and like cheering and screaming, and he like runs in and reminded me of me. Runs in and tells his wife, she's like standing in the kitchen cooking. He's like, "Hey, Panda, the guy tapped out," and she's just like, "Okay, dear." Has this look on her face, like,
Right.
that's nice.
It was. There was some. It was nice how, and see, it was one of those where, like you mentioned before, you didn't know what was going to happen because both brothers. It wasn't like Tommy Conlon. He's just the jackass brother, and then Brendan is the family man who they're in debt because his daughter had like a heart issue, and there was a bunch of hospital bills, and so that's why they have problems. But he's a good guy, and he's a teacher, and he's this, and everybody like Tommy had a whole other thing going on with him, but it didn't make you like him less.
Yeah, and they made them both seem so different, so drastically different, both with valid points of view.
Absolutely.
They gave them both like a lot of depth and complexity, You know, I mean, Tom Hardy, there are scenes in this movie, like especially towards the end when he's fighting, where he looks like an animal, like literally looks like an animal. Like it's just
I wouldn't
there's
want him to be on the other side of a ring as me.
no,
Oh
yeah,
no, thank you.
but it's like even so, they do such a good job at hinting at the reasons why he's doing what he's doing.
Hmm.
Because I guess we're not spoiling too much here.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think too terribly much. Try not
yeah,
to.
but it does hint at it explains through breadcrumbs over the course of the movie. You know, this is why he's back, and this is why he's back,
Yeah,
and this is what he's doing, and this is why people don't know about him, and this is why he wants to participate in this thing that he's in, and why he cares, and here's who this person is that he talked to before that was kind of mysterious on the phone, and like it just leads you down this thing, and it's a type of storytelling I really like because I hold up Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy as a really good example of this kind of thing where they don't hold your hand and spoon feed you who people are. Like it's a movie you have to pay attention to. You can't be like me flipping through like the memes subreddit while you're watching something like
I mean
this.
you can,
You
but
can.
probably not recommended.
Yeah, because I kind of did that. I was messing with something on my phone when I started this movie, and within the first couple of minutes, I was like, okay, I have to put this down. Like I know what kind of movie this is.
Yep. No, it was. I really enjoyed that too. When you're talking about when they're showing things with his character, there comes a point where he tells. I believe he's telling his father. He's so proud of him for this thing that you find out that he did,
Yeah,
and then he tells him, "Well, you proud of me for this?" And he tells him something, but then you find out the reason behind that thing that that admission that he gives. You
right.
find out why that happened, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And it's just it ends up being, oh, it made the storytelling of this. It was more than just a movie where guys punch each other.
Hmm.
It was more than that. Kind of like the movie Rocky, the original Rocky. It was, yes, it culminated in Stallone and or Rocky and Apollo and a fight that he never should have been a part of that fight, but he made it there and he did it. But the movie of Rocky was never about that. It was about the characters and getting to that point. Same thing with this movie. It was never really about the fighting. It was about the characters and how they interacted with one another and why they're doing it. And
Right.
another character that I want to bring up in this is Frank Grillo's character.
The trainer.
Uh, yeah, the trainer, Frank Campana, who
Yes. Yeah.
I like Grillo. I
I
mean,
do too. Yeah, he was good in the Captain America movies, right?
mm-hmm. And I
Like
don't know
that's
if
where I
you saw,
recognize him
but
from mostly. But it's like, oh,
he
that
he
guy.
did one recently on, I guess it was again Netflix. That it was actually a Netflix movie
Hmm.
where it was kind of like Live Die Repeat, that
Okay.
movie where he's going back and he's Groundhog Day
Yeah.
with this situation. But it was fun. It was a fun movie. It was fun with him. But apparently, let's see, he based his character in this movie on famed MMA trainer Greg Jackson. And Grillo and Joel Edgerton trained and lived with Jackson at his New Mexico gym during pre-production.
Hmm.
And then some of during the fight scenes, while Grillo is cornering Edgerton, when he's just talking to him and all that dialogue was kind of spoon fed to him by that guy, that famous trainer. And so that was kind of a neat thing that I found out. But I liked him in this,
Okay.
and he wasn't unlike other movies you've seen him in. He's not the star of it. He's not the bad guy. He's just a guy in the movie.
Yeah.
He's just a friend of the main character, and he was a nice addition.
Yeah. I like that I like this better now, knowing that dialogue came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not your normal motivation thing. It's like this is what a real trainer might actually say.
Yep.
Like you don't knock this guy out, you don't have a home. You're out of here. You can't. You're not going to complete this goal. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
like it's very. Yeah, I mean, a lot of pressure to put on somebody, but I like knowing that that's something the real trainer kind of condones saying. That
So
it's not just like generic.
yeah, that moment right there that you mentioned, the opponent that Conlon, Brendan Conlon is fighting in the ring at that moment. Did you recognize him?
He looks familiar. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't look him up.
Kurt Angle.
That was Kurt Angle.
That was Kurt Angle.
What happened to him?
I don't know.
Did he fall? Did he fall into a vat of roids?
I thought I like he looked familiar, but I didn't pay really any attention to it until I'm going through, I'm doing my IMDb stuff and I'm looking stuff up so that we can talk about it. And it said Kurt. I'm like, really? Oh, okay, that's why I recognized him.
Hmm.
But that moment that you talked about, and if you don't knock this guy out, and to be fair, I mean, you know what? I don't really want to spoil anything, so I don't really want to talk about
Yeah,
like
if we want to,
that. But
we can just continue talking about it and then do like a spoiler section if you want, like we tend to
mm,
do. Or do you not want to do it at all?
no, I don't necessarily want to spoil anything with this because I want our audience to watch this.
Okay.
And this is because it's not what you would think it is.
Yeah.
And like we talked about with we were talking about Brendan and Tess and how her character, it didn't do what a lot of movies do. She reminded me a lot of uh the wife in Ford versus Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of character who, I mean, yes, you talked about this thing and you talked about you're not going to do this thing anymore because that's your spouse. They care about you. They don't want you to get hurt or to die or like that's not a completely unselfish thing. Like it's okay for them to want that, and to be, once you've had the conversation of I'm not going to do this anymore, it be hard for them if you decide no, I have to do this again.
But then she does the human thing of being like, "Oh, it pays this much a week." What? Yeah, of course you're doing that. Why wouldn't you do that? And
right?
like understanding that that's what he does, and like he's the reason why he's doing it. In that movie, he's doing it for his family because they're going through a rough patch, and it's the same thing here.
Mm-hmm. And they're very good examples in both those movies of things you do not see a lot anymore, and that's a spouse backing the other one's play and saying, you know what, even if I don't fully 100% agree with your decision, you've made this decision, and because I am with you,
Yeah.
I am going to back you on this, because if I'm not backing you on it, you're going to have a harder time doing it, and I
Yeah.
need to support you in it.
And she's like, "I'm not watching." And then she's sitting there. It shows all these little scenes. He's, flashes sideways to her.
Right.
And she's like, just reaches out and touches her phone and kind of pushes it around on the table. Or she's like eating something or sipping something and looking at it. And it's like, what is she going to call him? Is this going to be the thing that motivates him? And it's like, no, she's waiting for the text of what happened.
Yep.
Like, that's what like, I didn't realize what was going on exactly. I did realize I had that phone. I had that phone back in the day. Like,
why wouldn't you have?
I was trying to figure out what phone Frank had when he was making a call in one scene. One of his guys gets hurt.
Yeah.
And he's on the phone. I was like, what is that? Like, it looked odd to me. And I was like, oh, that's right. This movie's from like 2011. That's a Razor. That's like an OG Razor.
Nice.
It was so weird to see because I kept forgetting they didn't do anything that relied too much on anything that would date it. The only thing that gets dated is Patty, that he's driving this like old Cadillac and he's listening to books on tape. But it's like, there are people who do that. They get stuck on something, or like I've listened to, stuff that you just can't find anymore. Like, you can't find it in a newer medium. So, there's nothing in it that's like, that takes you out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
Because it's like when you watch Friends or Seinfeld, like 99% of their problems would be solved if somebody had a cell phone. Like, which might be why sitcoms are worse today, because you can't have these like wacky misunderstandings because people are out of communication with each other. But it's like, yeah, this movie is, I don't know, just kind of timeless. Like, it portrays people behaving in a reasonable way for what they are. Like, people who come from an unreasonable background, like a very unlikely background.
Yeah.
Like there are people who grew up in circumstances like this who separated and went through what they went through, but it's not the norm. And I like the way they portrayed how differently everybody turned out because of it.
Yes, it was. I mean, there's scenes where, because of what Patty had done as a father to these two boys, that they both didn't want anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, the decisions you make, well, that's something you have to live with.
Right.
But there was a scene where he's talking to Tommy and he's like, I'm trying here. And he's like, no, you should have tried then.
Yeah. I
But as
needed you then. I don't have any use for you now.
But as on the other side of that, it's what I don't think what Tommy understood at that moment until the scene later on that we referred to, that you referred to,
Mm-hmm.
is Tommy didn't understand that his dad needed him.
Mm-hmm.
Like Patty needed Tommy at that point. Like he didn't realize, like he understood what he did when he was younger, and he has tried to do things in his life recently to become a better person
Right.
than what he was.
To atone.
And I mean, realistically, that's all you can ask of somebody. I mean, regardless of how upset you can be with them, and it's like he talked about forgiveness. Well, yeah, I forgive you. That doesn't mean I trust you.
Yeah.
And that's I've tried to explain. I tried to explain that to my daughter, where she had an issue with certain things and certain people in her life, and being really mad at them and saying, "Well, I can't forgive them for what they did. They made whatever happened." And I said, "I can't forgive them for that." And I explained this to her that, well, forgiveness isn't always about the person you're forgiving. Well, sometimes it's about you and you letting go of this hate, this thing that you're holding on to inside so that you can feel better. Not has nothing to do with the other person sometimes. It has to do with you forgiving them so that you can let it go.
Right.
But this movie, it hits so many good notes. And like I know you've got a brother, and you are as most people who have siblings, and um, there's at least some form of connection there. And I had a brother, and so because my brother's no longer here, there were parts of this movie that were rough. Like towards the end of it, I was kind of like like the old coach of the St. Louis Rams, Dick Vermeil. He was kind of a crier. I felt a little teary eyed at the end of this movie. It was
Yeah.
rough, man. I'm thinking about my life and my family, and my brother's not here anymore, and it was rough. But this movie was so much more than I expected.
Yeah.
I was glad that I could convince you to watch it. It was worth it. It was worth the time and effort to say, hey, I thought it was one thing. I thought, oh, I'm gonna watch some guys punch each other in the face. Oh, okay, I like guys punching each other in the face. It could be a fun movie, and it ended up being so much more than that, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. It really took me by surprise that it had so much depth to it and that they took such care in establishing these characters and making everybody seem fairly reasonable. I mean, I really like the way that Brendan and Tommy are at odds with each other
Mm-hmm.
because it's for different reasons. Like it's this weird triangle that they both have problems with Patty for the same reason.
Yep.
And then they have problems with each other and they have to figure out how to let that go. Or at least that's what Brandon's trying. And he even says things like, I was 16 when this stuff happened. Like, what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to know? Like, how could I know that this thing was going to happen? And it's just it just feels so real and it feels so tense. And there are just so many moments where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with this character. I don't know if they're going to be okay. I don't know how any of this is going to turn out. Because, like I said, it's not a movie that holds your hand. Like, and that makes it really good. Like it was an experience to go through there. I don't know. It made me emotional too. Not for exactly the same reasons as you, but it was still like, it's a powerful movie.
It is.
It's one where you feel it. Like there's some movies where it's just like a fun escape for a little while. This is the kind where you go through something.
And not the same kind of go through something like when we watched The Lighthouse. You go through something when you watch that too, but that's like a whole other level of something. This really hit some good notes as far as, like you said, the realism of it, how it made you feel about things, the beginning, trying to understand where everybody's coming from. You have one son who the father obsessed over him because of this talent level that he had, and the other son who, when the situation at home when they were younger changed, he thought, oh, well, maybe it's my turn. And nothing really played out the way any of them expected.
Right.
And this was a fun story. It was well written, extraordinarily well acted. And I mean, you got to see Jennifer Morrison in like some panties. So that was never terrible.
No comment. It was,
No
ooh,
comment.
man,
No, this was
that
I
made me
really
emotional too.
I mean, okay, take that aside. She wasn't like a huge character in the movie, but I really liked her. I liked the decisions that she made. There was a moment later on in the movie that wasn't anything that was entirely unexpected, but then when it happens, it it hit you kind of in the right way, and it was really good. I really, I still enjoyed it, even though it wasn't extraordinarily surprising. But some of the things they chose to do in this were really good. And it comes down to they both get into this tournament, and so it's one of those. So if you like the movies, like a blood sport kind of a thing where it's this tournament style and you have these different fighters who are going to be going up against each other, and you get to see a little bit of everything, different ways people fight, and different ways the two brother how different the brothers are in
Right.
their styles of fighting.
One brother is like a brawler, the other's like pocket sand.
Pocket sand.
No, I
Jesus.
I noticed that too. The fighting style is totally different because they're built
Mhm.
totally differently. I
Yeah.
like that. Like we were saying, a lot of shows and movies do this thing where they'll put people up against. I mean, we bitch about it with like women, that they'll have a woman who's a foot shorter and 200 pounds lighter than the guy she's fighting, and a lot of stuff portrays her going like toe to toe with them just in like brawler fashion.
Right.
Where like you need to have some kind of strategy. When you're way smaller than somebody else, you need to have a strategy.
Yeah. Well, and that's not just that's man or woman. That's
Right.
why they have weight classes.
Right.
Like,
That's what I mean. Like in this one too, they had that because
mhm.
just not spoiling anything, but when you watch Brandon and Tommy fight and look at their physiques, they're very different and they fight differently. They use their
Yes,
bodies
they do.
differently. And
Yep.
it kind of plays into it that Brandon is a physics teacher. Because that wasn't
Right.
lost on me, the way he does stuff and the fact that he's a
Right.
physics teacher. So, and yeah, the way they have to approach at least Brandon, they focus more on Brandon's fights, that he has to come at things differently because he's not as big. There's
Yeah.
always more strategy, more thinking involved in it, and I really like the way they do that nobody acts exactly the same. It's not like a TV show where you have somebody your son's size fighting somebody my size, and you're supposed to pretend that they're the same strength. I get that in some of those cases, you know they're portraying somebody with like powers, or like
You
the
mean,
character they're supposed to be in the comics is much stronger than this person appears to be or whatever.
yeah.
But it's still, this isn't one of those cases. These are just people, and I like that they took the time and the effort to make the fights more realistic, more grounded. Again,
They,
it adds to that tension to be like, what's he going to do? How's he going to get out of this? This isn't a Marvel movie. This isn't Captain Marvel, where or some other like cheesy PG thing where he learns the power of friendship and he can punch harder with it.
I could say, if I had a gripe about it, something that I thought bugged me a little bit. When you're dealing with this sort of tournament style, normally when boxers train and they box in a bout, or mixed martial arts and they train and it's all set up and they go to their fight, you don't immediately fight again that night, let alone do it again two more times the next day.
Mm-hmm.
That is insane. And so if you have person A who gets into a fight, but he knocks out his opponent really quickly, and so he's expended almost nothing, and then you have person B who had a knock two or however many more knockdown, drag out, grueling efforts. When two opponents are done with that fight, they are spent.
Yeah.
And they're spent for not just a few minutes or hours. They're spent for a week. Like, they need time to sit and recover. Like, that is people who've never done that. If you think it's no big deal, just you try sparring, just sparring, light sparring with somebody for a little bit. Throw some punches, do some. You get that's why one of the things, like in any of the boxing movies that you see, or any of these movies, that the thing they do is run. Like, why are they running? Because you need cardio. You have to have breath to keep up, because it takes so much out of you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you've got a couple of opponents who have to face each other, and one has barely done anything because he's just knocked out people really quickly, and
A
the other one has
monster.
had super hard drag out knockdown fights. That opponent, the one who's had that, is at a severe disadvantage.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I've never seen in real life any tournament setting like this. I've never seen a maybe in like WWF or WCW they would do something like that. And I don't ever want to say wrestling's not real. I know it's scripted, but those guys beat the hell out of each other. And if
Yeah.
you don't try and jump in the ring with them sometime, and you'll get the hell beat out of you too. They are physical, imposing specimens who, on a day-to-day basis, throw each other off, cages and crap, and like it's a bunch of it's hard, it's effort, but to do that in a real fight, I've never seen or even heard of anything like that. And doesn't mean it hasn't. I am not into that scene nearly as much as lots of other people, I'm sure, but when that happens, you're done. You train for that fight, you fight in that fight, you go your 10 rounds, and that's it. You're done. You don't, all right, well, I did this. Now I'm going to go fight this other guy in an hour. No, that's not how that works. No. So besides that aspect of it, this movie was fantastic and so much fun to watch.
Yep. I am really pleased that you recommended this. Like you said, you were pleased with Monster Squad. I was pleased with this.
Nice.
It was hard not to go straight into talking about this since we're only recording our last, this is the day after we recorded the Monster Squad episode. Mm-hmm. And we were going to do them both at once, but just ran out of time. And it was hard. Like we talked about it a little bit afterward, but it's like, we got to save this stuff.
Right. And this was something I wanted to talk about. This was fun. Really wanted to get into it. And Holligans, if you haven't seen Warrior, if you like any of those actors, this is something to watch. Mm-hmm. This is even something you could probably sit down, with your wife, your girlfriend, and watch it, because it's more than just guys beating the hell out of each other. It's not just that. And there's actually a movie to be had here. There's a story. There's things and motivations, and you're finding things out about characters, and this is all it just hits just the right notes at just the right time in all of this movie, and it's great because of it.
Mm-hmm. I do want to call out, though, just for me, The Americans. You ever seen that show?
No, I know the show you're talking about.
It's really, really good. It's a spy show about Soviet agents in the U.S. in the 80s, basically. Mm-hmm. But what I noticed, and there might be somebody out there listening who noticed as well, this movie came out in 2011, right?
Yes.
Okay. The guy who is the one who noticed Tommy in the gym, like the one who was like looking for somebody to spar with Mad Dog or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
And Tom Hardy was like, Tommy was like, I'll fight him. I'll keep him warm, like whatever. And then he's like, you owe me $200. Like that guy who comes to Patty's house looking for him.
Uh-huh.
And the guy who played the banker, who was like, hey, there's no shame in bankruptcy. Like, that would solve some of your problems. Yes. Those two were partners, FBI partners in The Americans.
Really?
And this was 2 years before The Americans. So they were in this together. Yeah. And then they got, I think his name was Padilla, Agent Padilla or something like that. The trainer guy.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a really good show. There's a scene in that show, one of the early ones, maybe first couple episodes, where they go into this shop where they think they're like selling electronics, and they think that they're smuggling stuff back to the Soviet Union through like these speakers, like sticking stuff in them or whatever. They don't know what's going on. All I know is the Soviets are going in there a lot, like more than they should. And Padilla starts like messing stuff up. And God, I can't even think of his name. But the white guy, like just a plain vanilla white guy, is like talking about, hey, because of affirmative action or whatever, like he's the only minority in our department. He literally can't be fired. He can do whatever he wants to your shop. And like, but they're both like really, really good. And it's, oh God, it's such a good show. Like it's another one of those shows where people are characterized really well. For the most part, their motivations are really clear. They all have their own stuff going on, and all of it plays into everything else. It's a really good show. But I was like, is that the guy? Is that the other guy? Like, oh my God, they're both in this. Like, what are the odds of that?
Well, they didn't have any interaction in this movie. It's not like, they're totally two separate characters from two separate scenes that have nothing to do with one another.
Yeah.
Yet, And you'll see that from time to time in Hollywood. Two people who work together on some previous movie and end up working together on something again, but it could be because, oh, hey, I work with him on set over here, and he might be the exact right thing that you need for this.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might have just been a fluke. They might have both just gone out for it and gotten the parts. Like, who knows?
And just happened to be there. Yeah, that's Noah Emmerich, who was the banker, and he played Stan Beeman. I can't believe I couldn't think of his name in The Americans. And then his partner is Chris Amador. I don't know where I got Padilla from. Is Padilla even a name, or am I just saying a word? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Maximiliano Hernandez. That's quite a name.
It is indeed.
But he's great. He's so good in that show. Stan's one of those characters who's like not super interesting by himself. Like he's interesting because of the people he's around. He's kind of the straight man for a lot of it.
Got you.
So it's fun to have him with these other people.
I think people take for granted how good you have to be the straight man. Like when you have the duos, when you have things like that, the other one seems like they're so good, but they're only so good because they're playing off of the straight man.
Yeah.
It really, in just any sort of things like that, it makes a difference. You know, like why a Lethal Weapon, things like that, why they're so good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
You need that to be able to play off of. But so what are we going to say? We're going to call out to all of our Holligans here and tell them, is this a watch or not a watch? I'm pretty sure they can probably guess.
Definitely a watch. And actually, I should have mentioned this before. I would recommend, I'm not taking responsibility in case there's something fishy with the app or the company, but there's an app called Just Watch that I've used. And it's one of these things where you can type in whatever you're looking for and it will tell you where it's available, what the prices are, some basic information about it. It's a good resource for trying to find this stuff, because I know for me, I use different streaming devices on my different TVs.
Right.
And some of them, like Roku's, tend to show stuff from everywhere. Apple tends to try to push you to buy it from Apple or rent it from Apple or whatever. So sometimes you'll end up buying something you don't need to. This is on Netflix. Like, I would have known that it was on Netflix if you hadn't said something about it, because when I just hit the little search thing, it was like, oh, you can rent it. And normally I feel like my Apple TV tells me, like, oh, just watch it on Netflix. But this time it didn't. I was like, you greedy. No.
Yes, if you would like to watch this, we can facilitate that for you. Just give us money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Tim Cook's like, good. Sitting in his emperor robe. And anyway. So yeah, Just Watch. I think there's another one called Real Good that I've heard of, but I don't know much about that one. But yeah, there are apps to like help find this stuff. So if you can't find it in your library, because sometimes, libraries are great resources for this stuff. I've rented lots of stuff from libraries, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would absolutely watch it. It's on Netflix. Hard to beat. And I honestly think it'd be worth renting if you wanted it, or if you're into this kind of movie, if you like these kinds of like, just this genre of this kind of like, like you said, the Rocky archetype, like buy it, whatever.
No, yeah,
you probably won't regret it.
This is definitely that kind of movie. If you're into, it's hard to say, like some sports movies, and I know this falls under the sports category, are like the sports feel good kind of underdog story. This has a little bit of that vibe, a little bit of it, but there's so much going on in this, more than some of the other movies like that you watch. No, this is really well done. Liked everybody who was in it. This is easily a watch. If you don't happen to have Netflix, rent it from somewhere, rent it on YouTube. I don't care. This is a night, spend $3-4, rent a movie, and you're not going to be disappointed having watched this.
Right. All right, man. That's all I got.
Yeah, man. That is it. After this, Holligans, hit us up. Hit us up on all of our socials. Maybe tell us what movie you want us to watch next. You got something like this? Something that has gone under the radar that all of our other listeners need to hear about? Hit us up. Tell us. We'll watch it and we'll tell them. That's what we'll do. And Ryan, where can they do that?
Well, they can find us on Twitter at MovieHowl, or they can email us at moviehowl@gmail.com.
Well, that sounds good to me. You don't have anything. I don't have anything. Sounds like we're done. So, Ryan, this one's been good. Until we get something else to watch, I guess you picked The Monsters. I picked this. I guess you're on the hook for the next one, so figure it out. What are we watching next?
Overboard,
The new one or the old one?
the old one.
Okay.
Is there a new one?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
God.
there is.
You know what?
You're-
I was playing. No, you know what? No, my morbid curiosity is not enough to get me to watch another version of that movie. I'm just not doing it.
Good. I'm glad.
I thought my video was frozen for a second because the way you were just looking at me, I assumed you're.
Are you serious right now with that? Is that really your pick?
No.
Okay. Okay, good. I mean, I know it. It's not a bad movie. I like, Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn. I mean, it's not terrible, but okay, thank you. Thank
No,
you
it's
for
not
that.
the greatest thing in the world, though.
It's not.
It's got the dad from the Gilmore Girls in it, which I realized because there are certain channels where that show just plays 24/7.
Yeah, there sure are. Well, I think that's enough rambling by us. Ryan's done. I'm done. Halligans, thank you once again for listening. We always do appreciate it. And I'm going to have to say we are out.